You know, I've seen a lot in my years. Lived through times when the world moved slower, when people weren't always in a rush to get somewhere. Now, everything is moving fast. People chasing after money, working themselves into the ground, forgetting to sit still and just be. I can tell you this much, life isn't just about running the longest race. It's about running it well. And if you want to live a long and fulfilling life, there are signs, small but important markers, that tell you you're on the right path. I've met plenty of folks who made it past 70, past 80, some even past 90, and do you know what I noticed? It wasn't just luck or good genes that kept them going. There were certain things they did, ways they lived, that made all the difference. Some of them never stepped foot in a gym, never took a fancy supplement, never obsessed over the latest health trends. But they lived well, and they lived long. If you're listening to this, maybe you're wondering about your own years ahead. Maybe you want to know if you're doing it right, if you're on the right track to a long and meaningful life. Well, let me share something with you, the first of 6 key signs of longevity. 1. A strong sense of purpose. Let me ask you something. When you wake up in the morning, do you have a reason to get out of bed? I'm not talking about obligations, things you have to do. I mean something that makes you feel alive, that gives you a reason to keep going. Because let me tell you, the people who live the longest, the ones who still have a spark in their eyes at 80, 90, they aren't just existing, they have a purpose. I knew an old friend named Harold. He was a carpenter, built houses with his bare hands for decades. After he retired, most people would have just slowed down, sat in front of the TV, maybe spent the rest of their years reminiscing about the past. Not Harold. He started carving little wooden toys for his grandkids, then for the neighbors' kids. Pretty soon, he was making them for a local orphanage. He didn't do it for money. He did it because it made him feel useful. And you know what? He lived to be 96. People think longevity is all about diet and exercise, and sure, those things matter. But you know what keeps the heart beating strong? What keeps the mind sharp? Having a reason to keep going. The moment you lose your sense of purpose, the moment you start believing that your best days are behind you, that's when time starts catching up. You don't have to build houses or carve toys. Maybe you find purpose in gardening, in writing letters to old friends, in mentoring younger folks, in taking care of a pet, in volunteering. Whatever it is, find something that keeps you looking forward, something that makes you feel needed. Because a person without purpose is like a tree without roots. Eventually, they wither. And let me tell you, if you're listening to this right now, your time isn't up. You're not done yet. There's still more life to be lived. 2. The ability to adapt to change. Now, here's something I've noticed over the years. The folks who make it to old age with their health, their minds, and their spirits intact, they aren't the ones who resisted change. They're the ones who learned to adapt. Think about it. The world isn't the same as it was 50 years ago. Heck, it's not even the same as it was 10 years ago. Technology, culture, even the way we communicate, it's all different. Some people fight against it. They get stuck in the past, talking about the good old days, refusing to accept anything new. And I get it. Change isn't always easy. But the ones who live long, meaningful lives, they don't let change break them. They roll with it. I once met a woman named Ethel. She was 85, and let me tell you, she had more energy than most 40-year-olds I knew. She had lived through wars, depressions, the rise of television, computers, smartphones. Instead of complaining about how different things had become, she stayed curious. She learned how to use a smartphone so she could video chat with her grandkids. She started reading books on topics she'd never explored before. She never let herself get left behind. Life will always throw change your way. You'll lose people. You'll see the world shift around you. Your own body will change. And you have 2 choices: resist it and suffer, or embrace it and keep growing. You ever notice how a river flows? It doesn't fight the rocks in its way. It moves around them, finds a new path. That's how you've got to be. If you want to live long, if you want to really live instead of just waiting for time to pass, you have to learn to bend with the winds of change instead of letting them break you. Some people say, "I'm too old to change." That's nonsense. If you're breathing, you're still capable of learning, of growing, of adapting. The moment you close yourself off to new experiences, to new ways of thinking, you start aging faster than your years. So, ask yourself, are you open to change? Are you willing to let go of the past enough to keep moving forward? Because if you are, that's a sure sign you're on the right path to a long and fulfilling life. 3. Strong social connections. Let me tell you something I've learned over the years. No one makes it through life alone. And the ones who live the longest? They don't just have years behind them, they have people around them. You ever notice how some folks start shutting themselves away as they get older? Maybe they lose a spouse, maybe their kids get busy with their own lives, maybe they just get tired of trying to keep up with the world. So, they stay home, watch the same shows every day, eat their meals in silence, let the phone collect dust. And before they know it, days start feeling longer, the world starts feeling smaller, and loneliness starts creeping in like a shadow. I'll tell you something most people don't realize. Loneliness is as dangerous as any disease. It eats at you, makes you weaker, shortens your years without you even noticing. The heart wasn't made to beat in isolation. It needs laughter, conversation, connection. It needs the company of others. I remember an old friend of mine, Charlie. He lost his wife when he was 72. For a while, he barely left the house, said he didn't feel like talking to anyone, didn't feel like doing much of anything. Then one day, a neighbor invited him to a community gardening group. At first, he wasn't interested, but after some pushing, he went. Little by little, he started talking again, started meeting new people, started laughing again. By the time he turned 90, he was still cracking jokes, still making plans, still surrounded by folks who cared about him. It doesn't matter how old you are, you still need people. And I don't mean just family. I mean friends, neighbors, even a kind stranger at the grocery store. Social connections don't have to be complicated. Maybe it's joining a book club. Maybe it's visiting the local cafe. Maybe it's calling up an old friend just to talk. What matters is that you stay connected. The longest living communities in the world have one thing in common: strong social bonds. People who check on each other, who eat meals together, who keep each other company through the years. If you have that, you have one of the biggest keys to longevity in your hands. So ask yourself, when was the last time you reached out to someone, really connected? If it's been a while, maybe it's time to pick up the phone. 4. A positive outlook on life. Now, I'm not saying you have to be happy all the time. Life isn't always sunshine and easy roads. There will be loss. There will be struggles. There will be days when you wonder how much more you can take. But let me tell you something. Your mindset, the way you see life, it makes all the difference. I've met two kinds of old folks. There are the ones who are bitter, who spend their days complaining about what they've lost, what's gone wrong, how unfair life has been. And then there are the ones who still find something to smile about, who still appreciate the small things: a good meal, a warm conversation, a beautiful sunset. You know which ones live longer? The ones who choose to see the good. I remember an old woman named Margaret. She lived to be 101, lost her husband in her 60s, outlived most of her friends, had more health issues than she cared to count. But she never stopped smiling. She'd say, "Well, I woke up today." That's reason enough to be grateful. She had this way of finding joy in the smallest things: a good cup of tea, a nice breeze, the laughter of children outside her window. Now, I know some folks will say, it's not that easy to stay positive. And you're right. It's not always easy, but it's a choice. Every morning, you have two options. You can focus on what's missing, what's wrong, or you can focus on what's still good, what's still possible. Did you know that people who live the longest tend to have an optimistic mindset? Science backs it up. A positive attitude reduces stress, strengthens the immune system, and even helps the heart. It's not just about being happy, it's about choosing to live in a way that keeps you going, keeps you hopeful. I'm not saying ignore your troubles, but don't let them be the only thing you see. Find something to look forward to, something to appreciate, even if it's just the way the sun feels on your skin in the morning. Because the people who live the longest, they're the ones who refuse to let life break them. 5. Staying physically active in simple, sustainable ways. Now, let me tell you something most folks get wrong about staying healthy as they age. A lot of people think you need to be in the gym lifting weights or running marathons to live a long life. But that's not what I've seen. The people who make it past 80, past 90, past 100, they're not the ones doing high-intensity workouts. They're the ones who keep moving in small but consistent ways. Just take an example of Frank, a man I knew. Lived to be 94, never set foot in a gym. But you know what he did? Every morning, he took a walk, same time, same route. Just a slow, steady walk around his neighborhood. Rain or shine, cold or warm. He was out there. And he wasn't rushing. He was enjoying it, stopping to talk to neighbors, taking in the scenery, breathing in the air. That simple habit kept him strong, kept him balanced, kept him living long. The biggest mistake people make is thinking that movement has to be hard, has to be some intense workout routine. But look at the longest living people in the world. In Okinawa, Japan, the elders work in their gardens every day. In Sardinia, Italy, they walk up and down their hills naturally as part of their daily life. In the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, they keep moving by doing chores, cooking, staying active in their communities. None of them are hitting the gym, but they're moving every single day. That's the key. You don't have to run 5 miles, just don't let your body get stiff. Take a walk, stretch in the morning, do a little gardening, sweep the front porch, play with the grandkids, dance a little while you're making dinner. Move in a way that feels good, in a way you can keep up with for years. Because if you stop moving, that's when the body starts shutting down. I've seen it too many times. People retire, stop being active, sit in front of the TV all day, and within a few years, their health starts fading. The body needs motion. It doesn't have to be fast, doesn't have to be strenuous. It just has to be consistent. So ask yourself, when was the last time you really moved? Not for exercise, but just for the joy of it. If it's been a while, it's time to start again. Take a short walk today, stretch your arms, lift your legs. Keep that body in motion, and it'll carry you for years to come. 6. Eating simply and naturally without obsession. Now, I've been around long enough to see diet trends come and go. Low fat, low carb, sugar-free, keto, paleo, you name it. Every few years, there's a new way of eating that promises to be the secret to long life. But let me tell you something. Most of the folks I've known who lived the longest, they weren't counting calories. They weren't obsessing over food. They were eating the way people have eaten for centuries, simply and naturally, just like Maria, my neighbor, lived to be 98. She never once worried about diets. She ate what she grew, vegetables from her garden, fresh eggs, beans, a little fish now and then. She didn't cut out bread, didn't ban herself from eating something sweet every now and then. But she didn't overdo it either. She ate what she needed, not what she craved. That's what people today get wrong. They either overeat or they over-restrict. But longevity isn't about extreme dieting. It's about balance. It's about eating real food, food that comes from the earth, food that nourishes instead of just filling you up. Think about it. The longest living communities eat simple, home-cooked meals. Whole grains, beans, vegetables, a little bit of meat or fish, some good fats. They eat slow, they enjoy their food, they don't rush, and they don't eat until they're stuffed. They stop when they're satisfied. One of the best lessons I ever learned was from an old Okinawan man I met years ago. He told me about the principle of hara hachibu. It means eating until you're 80% full, not stuffed. Just enough to give your body what it needs, not more. And it makes sense. When you overload your body with food, it has to work harder, process more, and over time, that takes a toll. I'm not saying you can't enjoy a treat now and then. Life is meant to be enjoyed. But if you want to live long and feel good doing it, don't make food your enemy and don't make it your escape. Make it your nourishment. So, ask yourself, what are you feeding your body? Are you giving it real, simple food? Or are you overloading it with things that wear it down? Because how you eat today determines how strong you'll be in the years to come. Now, if you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most people. You're thinking about your future, about how to live not just longer, but better. That's something most folks don't stop to consider until it's too late. They chase the wrong things, ignore the simple truths, and before they know it, the years slip by. But here's what I want you to remember. Longevity isn't just about adding years to your life. It's about adding life to your years. I've seen folks who lived well into their 90s, even past 100, and they weren't just sitting around waiting for the end. They were living. They had purpose. They had people. They kept moving. They adapted to life's changes. They saw the good in things, and they treated their bodies with care. They didn't obsess over it. They just lived in a way that made sense, simple, steady, and meaningful. So now let me ask you, where do you stand? Do you wake up with purpose? Do you keep your body moving? Do you have people to share your days with? Do you embrace change instead of fearing it? Do you feed your body well, but without obsession? And most of all, do you choose to see the good in life, even when it gets hard? Because here's the truth, every single one of these things is within your control. It doesn't matter if you're 40 or 70 or 85. As long as you're still breathing, you can start making these changes today. You don't have to do it all at once. Just start somewhere. Maybe today you take a short walk. Maybe you reach out to an old friend. Maybe you take a moment to appreciate something simple, a warm cup of coffee, a quiet morning, the sound of laughter in the distance. Longevity isn't about magic formulas or perfect genetics. It's about the choices you make every single day. Small, steady choices that add up over time. If there's one last thing I want you to take from this, it's this. Your life is still yours to shape. No matter how many birthdays you've had, no matter what the calendar says, you are still here. And as long as you're still here, you have the power to make the years ahead better than the ones behind you. Age is not a sentence, it's a privilege, a gift. And what you do with that gift is up to you. I've seen people in their 50s act like they've already reached the end. They give up on new experiences, stop learning, stop trying, stop believing that there's more ahead. And then I've seen people in their 90s still laughing, still exploring, still making plans. What's the difference? It's not luck. It's not just good genes. It's mindset. It's how they choose to approach each day. So if you're listening to this, let this be your reminder. Don't wait until tomorrow to start living better. Don't wait for the right time to take care of yourself, to reach out to others, to find purpose again. The right time is now. Even the smallest step forward is still a step forward. And when the years pass and you find yourself looking back, let it be with a heart full of gratitude instead of regret. Let it be with the satisfaction of knowing you didn't just exist, you lived. Because in the end, that's what a long and fulfilling life is really about. So go on now. Make the years ahead the best ones yet. You still have time. You still have life to live. Make it count.